Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Wood-burning stoves, open fires and the use of chemicals on farms all face new restrictions under government plans to tackle air pollution. The Clean Air Strategy for England aims to reduce pollution caused by particulates across much of the country by 2030. But green groups have criticised the scheme for not going far enough. This report from our science editor David Shukman contains some flashing images.
Blow! Squeeze, 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 squeeze.
Research into the effect of air pollution.
In your mouth?
In a major study, 3,000 children in London and Luton are having their lungs tested.
Yeah, that's it. So there you go.
It's known that the growth of children's lungs can be stunted by dirty air. What do you know about air pollution? What does it mean?
So it's really bad for your lungs.
What do you think that the
Children are especially vulnerable because they're growing very rapidly, and it seems clear that that pollution particularly affects the development of organs, so whether it's the brain or the lungs, for example.
And another one's just there.
Ella Kissy-Deborah suffered from asthma. Her family say air pollution contributed to her death 6 years ago, and they've won permission to apply for a new inquest. Standing in all this traffic with the smell and taste of pollution, it's hard to believe that Britain's air has actually got cleaner in recent decades. But at the same time, scientists have found out more and more about the damage that dirty air can do to us, which is why ministers are under pressure to take action. Farming is one key source of pollution. Ammonia is given off by fertiliser. The government is planning new rules to limit this. There'll also be tighter controls on what's burned in stoves. Michelle Beat lights hers in Bristol. They're attractive features, but amazingly, each one releases more tiny pollution particles than a diesel truck. And logs that are wet are the worst.
I totally understand the need to restrain or try to protect the environment. So we try and use, obviously, logs that are seasoned, but I wouldn't be happy if I wasn't able to use it.
Hardest of all is cutting pollution from traffic. The government has told councils to come up with plans, but some of them say they're not getting enough money.
It's very frustrating for us. Despite the fact that all the work we've done is based on our best assessment of what we need to support it, the government aren't actually coming forward with the funding that we think is needed.
Let's check that this one's fitting properly.
Back at the schools project, the children are fitted with monitors to track the air they're exposed to. The state of their lungs will show how well or badly the government is fighting pollution. David Shukman, BBC News.
Tempted by that cosy log burning stove or that crackling open wood fire? Well, think again. The government intends to ban most of the above under its clean air strategy, unveiled today. Green campaigners say even this doesn't go far enough in cleaning up England's air, but it has been welcomed by the World Health Organization. Farmers and their animals are also in the firing line. The government says that they're responsible for the vast majority of ammonia emissions, which can be harmful for both biodiversity and human health. Andy Davis reports from Somerset.
In Somerset this morning, this field would once have been covered in slurry. Now, with nearly £50,000 of new equipment, including a 2,000-metre long pipeline direct from the slurry pit, it's being injected into the ground.
The slurry is effectively being sort of injected into the soil, yeah.
Rather than just spread everywhere.
Rather than broadcasted like we used to do.
It's methods like this used by dairy farmer Chris Barber, which today's Clean Air Strategy for England wants rolled out across the agricultural sector, the principal source for rising levels of ammonia emissions.
What this is all about is minimising how much slurry is exposed to air, because slurry and manure emits ammonia, and that ammonia can react with other gases to form very fine particles. And those particles can be extremely damaging to our health. How much of an issue is the environment for you in terms of countering pollution?
I think it's an issue for all of us. For everyone in every sector of what they do, everyone has got to make a slight adjustment.
The 2014 smog in London has been attributed in part to agricultural ammonia emissions. The particles created can get into the lungs, heart and other organs. Then there are concerns over excess ammonia, which can also come from fertilisers, destroying sensitive habitats.
All the ammonia that's coming from farming is kind of disrupting the natural system. So this is now one of the biggest threats to our wildlife, not just in the UK but around the world, and it's really flown under the radar. So for years, really, there's been really almost no action on this. So that's why Plant Life is really pleased that there's such a big focus on farm ammonia in the clean air strategy.
This strategy promises new protections for habitats impacted by ammonia. New regulations too requiring low-emission farming techniques. All part of a wider strategy boasting it'll reduce fine particulate pollution below World Health Organization safe levels by 2030. That would mean only the cleanest wood-burning stoves, for instance, available to buy by 2022, as well as a ban on the sale of the most polluting fuels.
Our air quality is damaging the health of thousands. So we need to take action, and that action has to cover everything from making sure that we reduce the roadside emissions that come from vehicles to making sure that the emissions that come from how we burn wood and coal, and also how our farmers farm, are reduced. It's critical to making sure that our nation is healthier and our environment is purer.
It was welcome ambition, said the campaign group Client Earth today, but lacked legally binding limits. Action to protect people's health must be a requirement, they commented, not a nice to have.
Now, European Union rules shape many aspects of our everyday existence, including that basic of life, the air we breathe. And yet, in many of our cities, safe levels are regularly breached. And pollution isn't just confined to urban areas either. Today, the government set about trying to do more about it. There was nothing new on traffic fumes, to be fair, but instead there were proposed bans on wood-burning stoves and some farm fertilisers.
In the battle for cleaner air, one of the biggest problems is there isn't just one enemy. Heavy industry, heavy traffic, farming and home fires all belch toxins of different types into the air we breathe. Today, the government launched a strategy it claims is world-leading in getting to grips with the problem.
This strategy looks not just at what we need to do with roadside pollution and also what we need to do in our ports and airports, but what we also need to do when it comes to generating energy and when it comes to growing food. It's truly a strategy in the round.
Our air is a cocktail of damaging pollutants. Take the volatile organic compounds that come from open fires and wood-burning stoves, plus solvents in cleaning products and scented candles. One of the most harmful is nitrogen oxide, nearly half of which comes from vehicles, planes and trains. Increased use of diesel has slowed down a decline of this pollutant. Fine particles are a concern too. Diesel cars account for 12% of them, on top of log burner emissions. And then there's ammonia. Farming counts for 88% of this, and in recent years it's been growing. Campaigners welcomed the ambition in today's strategy, but point out it promises little new on the toughest problem, emissions from traffic.
Well, it's very disappointing to see that the strategy is missing out, really going further on tackling emissions from road transport. The government recognises that this is an immediate and urgent problem to protect people's health in our towns and cities.
You can understand their frustration. On the day of a clean air announcement, another government minister on a visit to Jaguar Land Rover says this.
I want to send a clear message that actually a modern diesel engine is much less environmentally damaging than hanging on to an old engine, so it's a good environmental choice.
It's true, a new diesel is better than an old one, but for Cheryl Lewington, who has asthma, no emissions would be best. For 25 years, she's watched the traffic outside her home near Southampton steadily increase as her health has deteriorated.
2 years ago, I had the most awful asthma attack and I was rushed into hospital. Completely out the blue, no warning. From that point onwards, I have not had a settled asthma at all. It's been really off the wall. And the government really needs to step up and look a little bit further down the road.
People like Cheryl have suffered after decades of inaction on air pollution. Now she and millions of others must wait to see if this new strategy goes far enough to actually clean up the air we breathe. Tom Clark, News at 10.